Hello, and welcome to Working Lunch, the Slow Chambers weekly series where we get to sit down with terrific people in our community and bring back some of that connection that COVID has taken away. In addition, get to learn some new things. I'm Jim D'Antona, President and CEO of the San Luis Obispo Chamber, and today you'll be joining me in my conversation with Scott Yoo, the Music Director for Festival Mozaic, but maybe more important, Chief Conductor and Artistic Director of the Mexico City Philharmonic, and Host Executive Producer of the PBS series Now Hear This. Beginning his musical studies at age 3, he's received numerous prizes and much recognition as a violinist and conductor. He's played in and conducted prominent symphonies, orchestras, and philharmonics across the globe, and through his Now Hear This series, Scott brings viewers into the life of venerated composers in the same way that immersive food series like Chef's Table have done for global cuisine. In tonight's Now Hear This episode, Scott will be sharing San Luis Obispo and Festival Mozaic with the world as he explores becoming Mozart. As a visitor years ago, my mother-in-law talked about some terrific things about this community, how wonderful the Slow Chamber was and the Mozart Festival back then, of course, now Festival Mozaic. So I'm truly delighted to now be able to have the opportunity to speak with Scott today about the TV show and Festival Mozaic, what it inspires him, and creativity and art in times of stress and social change. Scott, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks, Jim. Thanks. It's a pleasure and an honor to be with you.
Well, you know, as we always kind of kick this off, we like to know, where are you sitting down to Zoom in from today?
So I'm in my temporary housing in Columbia, Missouri. This is the only halfway presentable corner of this very tiny apartment that we're staying in temporarily, and it's nice to talk to a human being, even though it's over Zoom.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, this is the great part about Zoom, is that we're able to talk with you even though you're there in Missouri and we're here in SLO, because we'd love to have you here, but it's a terrific honor to have you here. So maybe if you could just start out by telling us a little bit about your upbringing and the role maybe music and travel played in your childhood.
Sure. I was born in Japan, but I'm not a Japanese citizen. I was naturalized when I was 7 years old. I grew up in Glastonbury, Connecticut, which is a suburb of Hartford. It's well known because Gordie Howe, the famous hockey player, lived there, and Oprah Winfrey has a house there. And I went all the way kindergarten through 12th grade there. I went to Harvard College for undergraduate degree, and somewhere in junior, senior year in high school, I started my professional music career as a violinist and then later as a conductor. I live here in Missouri because my wife, Alice Dade, who's been the Festival Mosaic's principal flutist since 2011, she's the professor of flute here at the University of Missouri. And so we live here with our 3 cats.
Wow, that actually sounds like a lot of, the 3 cats sound like a lot of responsibility.
It is. It is.
So, you know, obviously we talked about, you got your start, your parents got you into music very early, but where was it? Was there a piece or a trip that first really kind of grabbed you and inspired you hold you into music?
That's a really good question, Jim. I think kids get really hooked on baseball, at least pitchers, when they can start curving the ball. I think when you just throw it, it's just like throwing a ball, but when you can spin it and curve it, then the kids get hooked. Of course, it damages their arm. For young musicians, you get hooked when you get to play what the pros play. So when you're playing Go Tell Aunt Rhody or Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, you're not going to get hooked on playing the violin. But for me, when I started getting to play Mozart, and particularly one of his violin concertos, and the pros were playing that same music, I thought, oh, wow, this is really fun. So for me, when I was 9 years old, I was playing a Mozart violin concerto. That was the moment where I thought, oh, wow, I want to do this for the rest of my life.
I love the way you connected it to baseball. And it was not even a question or anything we'd talked about before, but I was a pitcher, and you are exactly right. When you can curve the ball and you destroy your elbow, which I did, you become hooked to that.
Sure.
Yeah, I can understand.
Because then you're like a pro.
Yeah, you nailed it.
That's what the pros do.
And it's so interesting. And so as part of that, in your creative process, kind of looking through that, has exploration, travel, and discovery always been part of that process? Or how does your creative process work?
Well, I first took a plane trip when I was, I think, 6 or 7 years old. And then right after that, I remember thinking, I want to travel all the time. We lived in Hartford between Boston, Boston and New York. So we lived in the middle. And so it was an hour and 40-minute drive to Boston. And then it was like a 2 hour and 10-minute drive to New York. And I always liked to be either in Boston or in New York. That to me was the ultimate. And I thought, wow, going to the airport is so much fun. Now, as a nearly 50-year-old man, I can tell you I have not missed going to the airport at all. I kind of can't stand it. But all joking aside, travel, and especially meeting new people and people you wouldn't have gotten to meet were it not for travel, for me, that's what you live for.
And so, you talked a little bit about that as the 50-year-old man who doesn't, done with the airport, or, more than happy not to be there. What does your typical year kind of look like? You said, we've talked about Mexico City as Philharmonic. Obviously in Missouri, you're not conducting from there. How does your normal year kind of play out?
Sure. So I spend 14 to 16 weeks with the orchestra in Mexico City, and I usually do that in 2-week chunks. So 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. If you do 8 chunks, that becomes 16 weeks. Festival Mozaic, I spend all of July in San Luis Obispo, either preparing for the festival or doing the festival. And then I usually come a few more times to do other concerts. We have a series called Winter Mezzo. And so I'll come back to San Luis Obispo. And that's great. It's a lot of work, but it feels like vacation because you're in San Luis Obispo. I mean, it's the best place to be. And then I do some freelance guest conducting, which will take more time. And then there's another festival I go to. And then, of course, Now Hear This. Now Hear This is usually about 2 weeks of shooting and then a week of post-production per episode. So when you subtract all that out, and usually nothing happens the second, third, and fourth weeks of August and in December, just nothing happens. If you subtract those out, that's almost every week of the year. I know that I was supposed to have a free week in June, and I had 3 weeks off in July. No, 2 weeks off in July. But other than that, I think nearly every week was spoken for in 2020. Of course, now with the pandemic, I've been home.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, it's an incredible schedule you just talked about there. That is, again, putting in of a sports player or whatever, you are on the road a lot. How has the pandemic changed all of that?
It has changed it a lot. So from the middle of February through June 22nd, I was going to be home for 1 day, and that was on May 5th. And we decided that we would close on the house. That, of course, the sale fell through, but we were going to close on our house on May 5th because that was the 1 day I was going to be home before June 23rd. Of course, it turns out I was home all of the days before June 23rd. We did film the Mozart episode of Now Hear This in San Luis Obispo, and we did that in the beginning of March and then in the beginning of July. And so the entire episode was filmed during COVID, and it was kind of a bizarre experience to film, to do anything during COVID, but especially film. I mean, even just the most mundane things like, where is the crew going to eat? That was difficult because nothing was open anymore. Every place that we were counting on to be open for us, they were closed.
Well, so, I mean, this is a really interesting, you talked about there that filming the slow episode, which is on tonight, which we're really looking forward to seeing. There must have been, if you're doing this in March, there must have been some really interesting setups and changes to actually film that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So when you use your iPhone to take a picture of yourself, it's called it's called a wide angle lens. The shot will cover a lot. And it makes people look closer than they appear to each other. When you use something called a long lens, a telephoto lens, you can shoot, let's say, a bird or like a football player on field. You're getting really close to them, and it does something called compress the image. And so the director of photography was constantly using a long lens, something that they would shoot, let's say, a bird with, to shoot me and whoever else was on screen with me, because they wanted to compress the image and make it seem like everybody was like super close together when we weren't. We were actually 9 feet apart. One of the hard parts of shooting that episode was simply we couldn't hear each other because we were so far apart. And we're having this kind of intimate conversation, but we're really far apart from each other. The first scene of this episode, of the San Luis Obispo episode, it's called Becoming Mozart. It takes place in front of an orchestra. We're all in the pack. And everybody was on risers so that the camera people could shoot up at people, so that to sort of disorient the viewer. Everybody was at least 8 feet apart from each other because we didn't want anybody to get sick. But if you have an orchestra that's everybody's 8 feet apart, it looks like if I try to grow a mustache, there's just not enough hairs on my face to make a believable mustache. It doesn't look like an orchestra because there are not enough people on stage. So what they did was they staggered everybody just a little bit so that it looks like they're right next to each other, but actually they're very far apart from each other. And then with that long lens, it glues everybody together and makes everybody look like they're right next to each other. They had all kinds of diagrams to make sure that everybody looked super close to each other. It's fascinating. I don't know anything about it, but it's cool.
Well, it's so interesting because I'm sure as you get started, as you're thinking, and I'd love to dig into a little of this of what was that kind of piece that got you into think about doing Now Hear This. I'm sure none of it was, how are we going to have to do this in a pandemic? And what am I going to have to, how are they going to film this in a crazy way? Because you think, okay, everybody just I assume walks into it when you're usually with the symphony, an orchestra, they just go in, sit down, everybody sits very close together, right? That couldn't have been part of any of your previous thoughts.
So what was really super bizarre, usually when you shoot Now Hear This, they say, okay, camera's ready, rolling, action. And then you just do your scene. With this one, there was an added step, which was cameras rolling, camera 1, take position 32, camera 2, take position 23, camera 3, take position 17. Violins, take your masks off, everybody else leave your mask on, rolling. So there were these 2 extra steps of the camera people couldn't improvise where they were standing. They usually improvise that. They couldn't, because if they're improvising, then suddenly people are going to be seen like they're really far apart. And then we wanted to make sure that as few people at a time had their masks off. So when the violinists had their masks off, the cellists all had their masks on. And so it was this really strange. And then when they said cut, then the director would always yell, everybody masks on. And as you may know from your previous TV experience, Jim, a lot of TV is just waiting. So a lot of what we were just doing was just had our masks on, just waiting. So it was good. Nobody got sick. Not one person got sick, and nobody's families got sick. I think we were good to be prudent.
Well, it sounds like you guys did amazing work, and I'm really excited to see the episode. But, one of the things that kind of comes to me here is your Festival Mozaic, and you're doing kind of the Now Hear This here. How did you first even experience SLO, if, again, you grew up on the East Coast there?
Sure. I first came to SLO because my college roommate lived in Monterey and wanted to show us something beautiful. So we drove through Big Sur, and we ended up in San Luis Obispo. And I remember the street signs like Monterey or Higuera, like it's the brown street signs with the funny lettering, the white lettering. And I remember thinking, wow, that's very peculiar, those letters. Then a couple of years later, I did a concert at Cal Poly. We were doing a tour, and we played in Orange County. We played in San Diego, and then Orange County, and then we played at the PAC. And I remember, oh wow, this is the place I went to with my college roommate. And we stayed up at Morro Bay after the concert. The tour bus drove us up to Morro Bay. We stayed at Morro Bay, and everybody in the orchestra was super happy because everybody had their own hot tub. So that was really cool. And then the third time was when I was one of the people that the festival was trying out to be their music director, because Cliff was retiring at the end of the 2004 season, and they needed somebody for 2005. So I came and I thought, oh wow, this is the same place with the street signs with the brown letters. And at that time, Megan Loring was running a restaurant near the train station called the Park Restaurant. I don't know if some of you remember that restaurant, but I ate there, and I remember we were eating out on the patio, and the weather, it was almost like you were inside because the weather was so perfect. It wasn't too hot, it wasn't too cold, it was just beautiful. And I remember thinking, wow, if they offer me this job, I'm absolutely going to take it. It's just so beautiful here. So I feel very lucky to have been part of San Luis Obispo now for, I guess, 16 years.
So that's actually a great trend. What was it that, in terms of featuring SLO and Festival Mozaic, and now here this, what made you kind of pull all that together? Or we're closing out this season with it. What made you feel that passion to do it this way?
Well, that's a great question, Jim. So the filmmaker wanted to do a episode on teaching somebody how to conduct. And so we needed an orchestra. And he asked me, can we do this in Mexico City? And I said, I don't know. I'm not sure, about that. And then he said, well, I actually said, let me talk to one of my friends. And so our second clarinetist, Michael Fine, he and I talked about, well, which London orchestra could we do this with, or could we do it in Paris or here or there? And then he said, well, Scott, I mean, you already conduct one of the greatest orchestras in the world, the Festival Mozaic Orchestra. It's better than all the orchestras we've been talking about. Why don't you just do it in SLO? So I brought it back to Harry, our filmmaker, and I said, hey, why don't we do it in SLO? And he said, that's actually a nice idea. Plus, the festival used to be called the Mozart Festival, so there's a nice tie-in there. And then when he came to San Luis Obispo, he stayed at Varian Ranch at one of our board members, and he used to take hikes. And I think he was really impressed by how beautiful San Luis Obispo is. And then he said to me, well, we haven't really got much natural beauty in this TV series. And we've gotten plenty of churches, concert halls, what have you, but we haven't gotten real natural beauty. And so he said, I think San Luis Obispo is perfect. And I said, okay, great. So San Luis Obispo and where else? Because we always shoot in 2 or 3 different countries for each episode. And he said, no, San Luis Obispo is going to be enough. There's enough there. There's so much wealth there of visual things that we're going to do it in San Luis Obispo. And I thought, great, that's fantastic for Festival Mosaic. It's fantastic for the town. I mean, I know that we've had Sideways, but that was already a while ago, right? That was 17 years ago. We got some love from Oprah, but this is something that's not about wine, but it's cultural, but it's all about San Luis Obispo. The entire PBS hour, 53 minutes, it's all about San Luis Obispo. It's about Mozart. It's about the festival. It's really a great way to showcase how great it is in SLO. People that I've shown the episode to, they gasped when they saw Cambria, and they said, wow, where is that? I said, oh, that's just Cambria, nothing special. That's the whole area looks like that. And they said, oh, I got to go there. Or when they see Sarah Chapel Sarah up in Shannon, they said, where is that? That looks otherworldly. I said, you got to go. It's awesome there. It's incredible.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's what drew me to this beautiful place. And as I said in kind of the opening, my mother-in-law, in talking about it, it's that cultural piece that is amazing here, that we do have this ability to have a fabulous festival that outsizes its weight class, right? In terms of a small community.
It's crazy. I mean, I don't know how many people live in SLO. It's like 60,000 or something. I mean, it depends on when it's a lot less. It depends on when the if the kids are in town or not. I mean, think about it. They have the PAC, which is world-class concert hall. They've got a very famous film festival, very famous. They have the best wine made in the United States, arguably. I'm not a wine expert, but from what people tell me, it's the best in the United States. And then we got this festival, this music festival, that's really one of the, maybe artistically, one of the 10 strongest in the country. My friend Michael insists that it's one of the 2 or 3 best orchestras in the world right now. I mean, it's just because it's an all-star group. I mean, it's an artificial situation. We have no weaknesses. Everybody is an incredible player. So I'm really glad that this episode happened at this time, with this festival in this community. All the stars kind of lined up at the right time.
Well, and so talk a little bit about, this I think is the last episode of season 2. Is there more coming? Is there going to be a season 3? And going through COVID, when is there a likelihood it'll come at some point? When will it come potentially?
Well, we are starting season 3. I can't say that officially because my boss, PBS, they're very sort of private about that sort of thing. But between us, we are in pre-production for season 3, which we are going to be shooting this fall. With COVID precautions, we are going to all be on a bus. We're going to shoot in the United States. We will shoot American composers, Aaron Copland, Amy Beach, Florence Price, other composers. We will have a doctor with the production team. That person's job will be to administer a rapid response COVID test to every member of the crew and me and the director and any guest. We will be tested every single day. We're going to have redundancies for everyone except for me and the director, so that if any one person gets sick, we'll make a very rapid change. And we'll probably be on the road for 40 days and try to shoot 4 episodes in 40 days, just back to back to back to back to back, no rest. So it's going to be pretty grueling. But America wants to see something new. We don't want to just watch reruns for another year. So we got to go out there and make content for America.
Well, I think there's an interesting question here. So, I like to think of the artists who have been playing, who've been wanting to play, but have not been able to. I mean, how, through your friends, through connections, how have you felt, how have artists been in terms of, have they been excited to get out and do some of these things, or are they kind of, struggling to find that creativity?
That's a really great question, Jim. It's 9 to 1. So 1 out of 10 people that we asked to do the Mozart episode in San Luis Obispo said no. They said, I don't feel comfortable traveling. And, we totally respect that, 100%. 9 in 10 people said, get me there. I'm in. I want to do this. I'm so hungry to do this. So what we expect preparing season 3 is that if we ask 20 musicians to be on the show, 4 of them are going to say no, and 16 of them are going to say yes. And so we'll have to ask 25 people to get 20. And we understand that. And we totally respect those who are, there's some of my friends who are extra careful. Totally respect that. That makes complete sense. We were very, very careful. I mean, we were wearing masks all the time, including outside. We just never took the mask off, just to be sure.
And so are you doing okay? And like, in terms of, you obviously you're used to conducting. It's been at least 6 months since you've really done conducting. And I'm assuming the same with the artists. Are you getting out and everybody hanging out at a park and just doing a little playing, or is there anything happening like that?
So at Festival Mosaic, we did a couple of concerts in July that were in front of, I think, 15 people at a time, 20 people at a time. Everybody was more than 10 feet apart, socially distanced. So that kind of quenched that thirst a little bit. I think, Jim, to be very frank, I think I was approaching the point of just total burnout, just given the number of concerts I was doing from January to June. I remember telling my wife, I'm not sure how I'm going to survive this spring, because it just was so much one after another. And I just said, I'm not sure how I'm going to survive this. And then, of course, it happened. And then I didn't survive it. Nothing happened. You know, the pandemic has definitely affected different people differently. I'm one of the very fortunate ones because I continued working for the TV show, and I kind of had a role in society. Some of my other friends, you know, have largely been grounded and haven't been able to do much. I have friends in town who've lost most of their income and really needed government assistance. So I consider myself to be one of the extremely fortunate people, the fortunate among the fortunate. And, you know, I'm grateful for that.
Sure. Well, and so just, I can't believe we're already with it. It's already been a half hour, but we'll just kind of get in a last couple questions. So obviously tonight is the slow episode. And if people want to catch Now Hear This, it's on PBS, correct?
It's on PBS. It should be on PBS at 9. And you can also watch it, I think, starting midnight. You can watch it on pbs.org. They stream it for about a month, and then they put it up behind the paywall, and that's called the PBS Passport. It's PBS's version of Netflix. And actually, it's actually not very expensive. I subscribe to it because it's $60 a year. It's like $5 a month. You can also watch it if you have an Amazon Prime account. They do release Now Hear This on Amazon Prime. And other than that, it did appear on YouTube for a little while. I think season 1 had over 1 million views on YouTube. It was up for a few weeks, and then PBS found it, and of course, you know, knocked it right off, because that's kind of verboten. But you know, the easiest way to watch it is just by just tuning into your TV and just watching it normally.
Absolutely. And so any kind of future here, looking at, you know, Festival Mosaic coming around, you guys putting the plans together for what this next season will look like, the winter mezzo, any of those?
Absolutely. So I think we're pretty much done planning next summer, hoping that happens, but we have various menu options. We can do this option, and if they don't allow us to do that, we'll do this option or this or this. And then we have a bunch of concerts that we're looking forward to presenting to San Luis Obispo. I'll be there, and some of the other festival favorite performers. And we have, I think, 4 or 5 different concerts that are planned, and it's just a matter of us getting the green light to do them in a safe and responsible way.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like really looking forward to it. So a final question we always ask that we want to kind of find out from you is there anything you're looking forward to this weekend?
That's a nice question. You know, I think that one thing I've learned about this pandemic is that running to an airport is not necessarily the most important thing in life. And one thing I've done more this summer than all of my other years combined is have a cookout. And I'm looking forward to just having a small cookout, actually just for me and my wife. But I find it's something very meditative and kind of soul enriching to just sit there and watch a fire sort of gather steam, and then, you know, grilling something, some vegetables or some meat. So I'm hoping to do that this weekend, weather permitting. I hope everybody out there is safe and is taking care of their health for sure. You too, Jim. and Molly. I'm very honored that you would ask me to join you.
Well, we're so blessed to have you on the show, but in our community and doing the amazing things you're doing. We obviously, as a community, really thank you for highlighting it. We can't wait to see the next episode, but the next season, and all the work you're doing with Festival Mozaic and Lloyd over there. And so we really, truly appreciate you taking the time today and being with us from your home in Missouri there.
I'm grateful to you. Thank you, Jim.
Pleasure. Well, so for all of you joining us, thank you so much for eating lunch with us. And we know that there's obviously some questions on there. We'll try to get you some answers to what was happening on Facebook. And we hope to see you next week when we're joined by Leanne Standish, the newly named Executive Director for the SLO Arts Museum. If you have an idea for a working lunch guest or someone you want to learn more about, send us an email at slochamber@slochamber.org. We appreciate you tuning in. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. Stay healthy and safe out there. Goodbye, everyone.